Look, when the Galactic Confederation put together their official species to avoid at all costs handbook, humans weren't even mentioned. Not because they were harmless, oh no, that would have been too simple. They weren't mentioned because every civilization that had encountered them was either dead, too traumatized to speak coherently, or had mysteriously developed a severe case of selective amnesia regarding anything terror-related. The handbook did, however, contain some interesting footnotes. Footnote 247b, for instance, simply read, "If you receive distress signals from the Sol system, turn around immediately. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200 credits. Just don't." Footnote 419x was even more cryptic. They weaponized their entertainment industry. But the most telling entry was footnote 1a, which appeared at the very beginning of the handbook in bold, flashing text. There is no footnote 1a. If you think you're reading footnote 1a, you're probably already dead. Captain Zexthan of the Meridian Science vessel Peaceful Inquiry was, unfortunately, not the type of being who read footnotes. He was the type who skipped straight to the practical applications section and then complained when the theory didn't match reality. Which is how he found himself staring at a garbled distress signal from a system that, according to his star charts, didn't officially exist. "Navigation Officer Veltar," he called, his four eyes swiveling independently to focus on his subordinate. "What's our current position?" Veltar, a crystalline being whose species communicated primarily through interpretive light patterns, flickered nervously. "Sir, we're approximately 47 light-years from the outer rim. Sector designation, The light patterns grew more erratic. "Sir, the sector doesn't have a designation. It's marked as Here Be Dragons on the official charts." "Dragons?" Zexthan's mandibles twitched in what passed for amusement among his species. "How charmingly primitive. And this distress signal?" "It's odd, sir. The linguistic algorithms can't make sense of it. It seems to be some sort of plea for help, but the syntax is all wrong. Also, sir, there appears to be background music. Specifically, something called Don't Stop Believin' by a group named Journey." Zexthan paused. In his 47 years of service to the Confederation, he had never encountered a species that included musical accompaniment in their distress calls. "Fascinating. Set course for the signal's origin." This could be a significant first contact opportunity. Veltar's light patterns shifted to what could only be described as the crystalline equivalent of, "Are you absolutely sure about this, sir?" But he complied nonetheless. 3 hours later, the Peaceful Inquiry dropped out of hyperdrive at the edge of what their sensors indicated was a solar system containing 9 planets, or possibly 8, depending on whether you counted the tiny one at the end, which seemed to be the subject of some sort of ongoing celestial custody dispute. "Sir," Veltar announced, his voice carrying a tremor that made his crystalline structure resonate like a wind chime in a hurricane. "We've located the source of the distress signal." "Excellent. What have you found?" "A small blue-green world, 3rd planet from the star. Single moon. Primitive technology level, though." Veltar paused, his light patterns cycling through several configurations that roughly translated to, "What the hell?" in standard galactic. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures, multiple launch facilities, and something that our computers keep identifying as a space force, though that seems redundant." Zexthan's confidence wavered slightly. "Space force? How does one force space? It's already there." "Unknown, sir. But I'm also detecting what appears to be a fleet of vessels heading directly for our position. ETA approximately 6 minutes. A fleet?" Zexthan's mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sure sign of stress among his people. "How many ships are we talking about?" Veltar was quiet for a long moment, his light patterns cycling through calculations. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, all of them." "All of what?" "All of the ships, sir. They appear to have sent all of them." Chapter 2. First Contact Protocols, or How to Start an Interstellar Incident. Admiral Ryan Kepler stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, hands clasped behind his back, watching the alien vessel through the main view screen with the sort of calm that came from either supreme confidence or complete resignation to fate. At 52, he'd seen enough action to know the difference between a genuine threat and a cosmic joke. This situation was rapidly approaching the latter category. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Davis from the sensor station, "the alien vessel appears to be, how do I put this, trembling." "Trembling?" Kepler raised an eyebrow. "Ships don't tremble, Commander." "They might experience structural vibration due to engine harmonics, but they don't." "No, sir, it's definitely trembling. Like a chihuahua that's just been introduced to a freight train." Kepler considered this. In his 30 years of military service, he'd learned to trust his officers' colorful metaphors. They usually indicated something important that the technical readouts were missing. Any response to our hails? Yes, sir. They've been broadcasting the same message on repeat for the past 3 minutes. We come in peace. We come in peace. Please don't hurt us. We were just trying to help. We have families. They're broadcasting in English. Yes, sir. Perfect English, actually. Better grammar than most of our crew. Kepler nodded thoughtfully. Weapons status? All ships report ready for combat, sir. The Retribution is particularly eager, according to Captain Williams. Something about finally getting to test their new antimatter torpedoes on something that might shoot back. Tell Williams to dial down the enthusiasm before he starts an interstellar war. Open a channel to the alien vessel. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at what could only be described as the most terrified creature in the known universe. It had 4 eyes, all of which were currently wide with panic. Mandibles that were clicking so rapidly they created a sound like castanets having a seizure, and was wearing what appeared to be a military uniform that had seen better decades. Greetings, Kepler said in his most diplomatic tone. I am Admiral Ryan Kepler of the United Earth Space Force. We received your distress signal. The alien's eyes somehow managed to get even wider. You actually came to help? That's generally what we do when someone calls for help. But you're humans. Kepler blinked. Yes, that's correct. Is that a problem? The alien made a sound that the universal translator helpfully identified as either laughter or a complete nervous breakdown. A problem? A problem? Do you have any idea who you are? Yes. Kepler's voice carried just a hint of confusion. We're the people who responded to your distress call. You're the humans! The Death Worlders! The species that looked at their perfectly habitable planet and decided it wasn't dangerous enough, so they strapped rockets to metal tubes and launched themselves into the vacuum of space for fun. Lieutenant Commander Davis leaned over to whisper to Kepler. Sir, I think our reputation might have preceded us. What reputation? Kepler whispered back. Apparently the one where we're terrifying death machines. But we're not... Sir, the alien continued, his panic reaching new heights. We just need safe passage to the Meridian sector. Our ship's navigation system malfunctioned, and we've been stranded here for 6 cycles. We sent the distress signal, hoping maybe some patrol craft from the Outer Rim territories might... 6 cycles? Kepler interrupted. How long is a cycle? About 47 of your Earth days, sir. Kepler did the math. So you've been stranded here for almost 8 months? Yes, sir. And we're down to emergency rations. Veltar here. He gestured to a shimmering crystalline being who was flickering so rapidly he looked like a disco ball having a panic attack. Hasn't had proper light spectrum nutrition in 3 cycles. He's starting to lose cohesion. The Admiral looked around his bridge crew, all of whom were wearing expressions that ranged from amused to bewildered. Well, he said finally, that settles it. We'll escort you to safe harbor. Consider yourselves under the protection of the United Earth Space Force. The alien's clicking mandibles suddenly stopped. The silence was so profound that the bridge crew could hear the ship's environmental systems humming. You're going to help us? Just like that? Just like that. But why? Kepler smiled, the expression somehow managing to be both warm and slightly predatory. Because, Captain, I'm sorry. I don't think I caught your name. Captain Zexthan of the Meridian Science Vessel Peaceful Inquiry. Because, Captain Zexthan, that's what humans do. We help. In the background, barely audible over the comm, someone on the alien bridge whispered, Dear Cosmos, they're going to help us. We're all going to die. Chapter 3. The Horror of Human Hospitality. What Captain Zexthan failed to understand, and what would haunt his dreams for cycles to come, was that humans had a very specific idea of what constituted help. It was an idea that had evolved over millennia of surviving on a planet that was actively trying to kill them, and it showed. Captain Zexthan! Admiral Kepler's voice came through the comm with what Zexthan was beginning to recognize as ominous cheerfulness. We're going to transfer some supplies to your vessel, basic necessities to get you through the journey. That's very kind of you, Admiral, but we couldn't possibly... Nonsense. It's our pleasure. Lieutenant Commander Davis, please prepare a care package for our new friends. 20 minutes later, a human shuttle docked with the Peaceful Inquiry. The human who emerged was tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing what appeared to be a permanently friendly expression that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. Good morning, the human announced cheerfully. I'm Lieutenant Briggs. I understand you folks have been having some navigation trouble. Zexthan's translator was working overtime trying to process the human's linguistic patterns. There were layers of meaning here that seemed to exist independently of the actual words being spoken. Yes, Lieutenant. Our navigation systems experienced a cascade failure during our last hyperspace jump. Oh, that's rough. Hyperspace can be tricky. Good news is we brought you some supplies to help out. Briggs gestured to several large containers that other humans were wheeling onto the alien ship. Food, medical supplies, entertainment materials, and some basic tools that might come in handy. Veltar, who had been maintaining a safe distance from the humans, flickered nervously. Entertainment materials? Sure thing. We figured you might be bored after 8 months in space. Got you some movies, music, books. The classics. Die Hard, Aliens, Predator, The Thing, all the feel-good stuff. Zexthan's mandibles began their stress clicking again. Those titles sound rather ominous. Oh, they're great! Really show the human spirit. Never give up, never surrender. Always find a way to win against impossible odds. You'll love them! The human began opening containers, revealing items that defied all logic. There were tools that appeared to have been designed by someone who had only heard vague descriptions of what tools were supposed to do. Food packages with labels that read things like MRE, meal ready to eat, beef stew, warning may contain traces of hope, and emergency chocolate for when everything goes wrong. But it was the medical supplies that truly broke Zexthan's brain. The human was cheerfully explaining the use of something called a trauma kit. Now, this little beauty here can stop bleeding, seal wounds, provide pain relief, and in a pinch, it can be used as an improvised explosive device. I'm sorry, what was that last part? Oh, the IED function? Yeah, it's dual purpose. Very efficient. Just remove this safety tab here, set the timer, and you've got yourself a nice little bang. Nothing too big, just enough to clear a blocked passage or create a distraction. Veltar's light patterns were now cycling through what could only be described as existential terror. Your medical supplies can be weaponized? Well, sure. Can't yours? Briggs looked genuinely confused. I mean, what's the point of carrying something that only has one function? That's just wasteful. Zexthan was beginning to understand why humans had the reputation they did. Everything about them screamed maximum efficiency through controlled chaos. Even their charity was terrifying. Lieutenant, he managed to say, this is all very generous, but perhaps we should focus on just the navigation assistance. Briggs smiled, and Zexthan immediately regretted mentioning navigation. Oh, absolutely. Actually, we've got something special for that, too. Chief Petty Officer Williams here is our best engineer. Williams, show them the thing. Williams stepped forward, carrying what appeared to be a small device covered in blinking lights and warning labels. It was the sort of thing that looked like it belonged in a museum dedicated to dangerous ideas that probably shouldn't exist. This, Williams announced proudly, is a quantum navigation correction matrix. Completely automated, self-configuring, and virtually foolproof. What does it do? Veltar asked, though his light patterns suggested he didn't really want to know. Simple. You plug it into your navigation system, and it uses quantum entanglement to lock onto the nearest stable hyperspace lane. No matter where you are, it'll get you home. That sounds wonderful, Zexthan said carefully. What's the catch? Williams and Briggs exchanged glances. Well, Williams said slowly, there's a small chance it might accidentally create a localized space-time distortion. How small? Define small. Less than 1%? Define percent. Zexthan's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. This was somehow worse than the stress clicking. What exactly are the side effects of this space-time distortion? Oh, nothing major. Temporary causality reversal, minor dimensional bleeding, possible timeline divergence. Standard stuff. The probability matrix suggests only a 12.7% chance of accidentally creating a parallel universe where everything is slightly to the left. 12.7%? Briggs waved dismissively. That's well within acceptable parameters. Besides, even if it does create a parallel universe, you probably won't notice. The differences are usually pretty subtle. Veltar's light patterns had now shifted to what could best be described as the visual equivalent of screaming. You consider accidentally creating alternate realities to be subtle? Well, yeah. It's not like we'd create a universe where the laws of physics work differently or anything. Just, everything shifted slightly to the left. Maybe some colors are different. Really minor stuff. Chapter 4. The Escort from Hell and Other Human Concepts of Safety. The journey to the Meridian sector, which should have taken 3 days, became what Zexthan would later describe to his therapist as the longest week of my existence, assuming I still exist, and haven't been replaced by a slightly to the left version of myself. The problems began almost immediately. Captain Zexthan, Admiral Kepler's voice came through the comm system with that same ominous cheerfulness. "We're detecting some unusual energy readings in this sector. Nothing to worry about, but we're going to maintain close formation until we clear the area." "What kind of energy readings?" Zexthan asked, though he was beginning to learn that asking humans for specifics was usually a mistake. "Oh, the usual. Tachyon storms, gravitational anomalies, possibly some sort of interdimensional entity that feeds on subspace radiation. Standard spacer stuff." "Standard?" Veltar's light patterns were approaching the frequency range that indicated either extreme terror or a complete system breakdown. "How is any of that standard?" "Well, it's space, right? Of course it's trying to kill you. That's what space does." This, Zexthan realized, perfectly encapsulated the human approach to existence. They lived in a universe that was actively hostile to their survival, and their response was to shrug and carry on as if this was perfectly normal. Which, from their perspective, it apparently was. The first incident occurred 6 hours into the journey. "Admiral," came a voice over the comm. "This is Captain Stevens on the Retribution." "We've got incoming." "What kind of incoming?" "Looks like a pack of void hunters. 12 contacts, approaching from our starboard flank." Zexthan's blood, or the phosphorescent fluid that served the same function, ran cold. Void hunters were among the most feared predators in known space. They traveled in packs, fed on energy signatures, and had never been known to leave survivors. Most civilizations dealt with void hunters by running away very quickly and hoping the hunters would find something else to eat. "Roger that, Stevens. All ships maintain escort formation. Let's show our guests what hospitality looks like." "Sir," Zexthan called frantically over the comm. "You don't understand! Those are void hunters! We need to run." "Run?" Admiral Kepler sounded genuinely confused. "Why would we run? There's only 12 of them." "Only 12. Captain, void hunters are—" "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Davis interrupted. "The void hunters are breaking off their approach. They're running away, sir." "Huh? Well, that's disappointing. I was hoping the crew could get some target practice." Zexthan stared at his communications panel in stunned silence. The humans had scared away void hunters. Not destroyed them, not outmaneuvered them, scared them. The void hunters had taken one look at the human fleet and decided they had somewhere else to be. "How?" he whispered. "How what?" Admiral Kepler asked. "How did you scare away void hunters?" "Oh, we didn't do anything special. They probably just realized we were here and decided the area was too crowded." Veltar's light patterns had shifted to a new configuration that Zexthan had never seen before. He consulted his cultural database and discovered it roughly translated to, "I have stared into the abyss, and the abyss has stared back, and now we're both very uncomfortable with this situation." The second incident occurred the following day. "All ships, this is Admiral Kepler. We're approaching the Bermuda Nebula. Fair warning to our guests, this area is known for some unusual phenomena. Don't be alarmed if you start experiencing minor hallucinations, temporary memory loss, or the occasional existential crisis." "Existential crisis?" Zexthan asked weakly. "Nothing major. Just the usual stuff. Who am I? What's the meaning of existence? Why do humans consider danger to be a recreational activity? That sort of thing. It usually passes once we clear the nebula." They were halfway through the nebula when the Peaceful Inquiry's sensors began reporting impossible readings. Space itself seemed to be folded, twisted. The ship's computer kept trying to calculate their position and coming up with results that included negative numbers, imaginary coordinates, and at one point, the unhelpful notation, "Here be dragons," literally. "Admiral," Zexthan called, his voice tight with panic. "Our sensors are showing impossible readings. We may be lost in some sort of spatial anomaly." "Oh yeah, that's normal. The nebula messes with conventional sensors. We use biological navigation for this stretch." "Biological navigation? Sure. Lieutenant Kowalski has an excellent sense of direction. Never gets lost." "Kowalski, which way to clear space?" A new voice came over the comm. That way, sir." "I think. Maybe. Actually, I'm pretty sure we're supposed to turn left at that weird purple thing." "What weird purple thing?" Zexthan asked. "The one that shouldn't exist according to the laws of physics. It's right there, next to the space that's folded inside out." Zexthan looked at his view screen. There was indeed something purple that hurt to look at directly, sitting next to what could only be described as space that had given up trying to make sense. "Sir?" Veltar flickered urgently. "I don't think Lieutenant Kowalski's biological navigation is entirely reliable." "Nonsense," came Admiral Kepler's voice. "Kowalski grew up in Detroit. If you can navigate Detroit, you can navigate anything, including nebulae that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Somehow this actually worked. 3 hours later, they emerged from the nebula into normal space, with all ships accounted for and no one having suffered more than mild existential questioning. "See?" Admiral Kepler said cheerfully. "Piece of cake." Zexathan was beginning to suspect that humans had a fundamentally different relationship with reality than the rest of the universe. It was as if they had looked at the laws of physics, probability, and common sense, and decided these were more like suggestions than actual rules. Chapter 5. The Revelation, or How Humans Accidentally Conquered Space. It was on the third day of their journey that Zexathan made a discovery that would change his understanding of humans forever. It happened during what the humans called downtime, a concept that seemed to involve them doing exactly the same things they did during uptime, but with less supervision. He was reviewing the entertainment materials the humans had provided when he noticed something odd about their historical records. According to the database, humans had achieved spaceflight barely 2 centuries ago. This was, by galactic standards, practically yesterday. "Admiral Kepler," he called over the comm. "May I ask how long your species has been spacefaring?" "Let's see. First moon landing was 1969, so about 350 years, give or take." Zexathan's mandibles began their now familiar clicking. 350 years? But your technology level, your fleet size, your apparent familiarity with dangers that most civilizations consider legendary. Oh, that. Yeah, we're quick learners. Quick learners? Well, we had to be. First time we left our home system, we ran into the Arcturus Trade Federation. Nice folks, very welcoming. They explained galactic civilization to us, gave us some basic technology, warned us about the dangerous areas of space. That sounds reasonable. It was. Very helpful. Of course, the first thing we did after that was go check out all the dangerous areas they'd warned us about. Veltar's light patterns shifted to the visual equivalent of, "Why would you do that?" "We were curious," Admiral Kepler continued. "I mean, if something is dangerous enough that an advanced civilization warns you away from it, it must be pretty interesting, right?" Zexathan was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, when the Arcturus Trade Federation warned you about dangerous areas of space, did they happen to mention the burning zones?" "Oh, sure. First place we went. Fascinating stuff. Turns out if you properly calibrate your shields and maintain a minimum safe distance, the plasma storms are actually quite beautiful. We've got several research stations there now." "Research stations in the burning zones. Well, where else are you going to study plasma storm dynamics? We've learned a lot about stellar engineering from those observations. Very practical applications." Zexathan consulted his mental database of galactic history. The burning zones were considered absolutely off-limits. Ships that entered them were never seen again. The Arcturus Trade Federation had lost an entire exploration fleet there 6 centuries ago, and had declared the region permanently quarantined. What about the Void Gardens? Beautiful place. We've got a tourist route through there now. The crystalline formations are spectacular, and the gravitational effects make for some really interesting zero-G sports. The Void Gardens, where space itself was so twisted that most species experienced complete madness just from looking at sensor readings. Humans had turned it into a vacation destination. The Whisper Sectors? Oh, we love the Whisper Sectors. Great place for meditation retreats. Very peaceful. The voices are actually quite soothing once you learn not to listen to what they're saying. Zexathan was beginning to understand. Humans hadn't conquered space through superior technology or advanced civilization. They had conquered space by being too curious, too stubborn, and too genuinely friendly to be stopped by minor inconveniences like certain death or laws of physics. "Admiral," he said slowly, "how exactly did your species go from first contact to this?" He gestured helplessly at the massive fleet surrounding his small science vessel. "Well, after we'd explored most of the dangerous areas the Arcturians had warned us about, we started making friends with other civilizations. Turns out, a lot of species had problems they couldn't solve because the solutions were in areas they considered too dangerous to explore." "Such as?" "Oh, all sorts of things. The Zenithari needed a particular type of exotic matter that could only be found in collapsing star systems, but they were afraid of the gravitational effects. The Crystal Collective wanted to establish trade routes through the maze nebulas, but their ships kept getting lost. The Verdant Alliance needed someone to negotiate with the Hive Mind in the Outer Dark." The Hive Mind in the Outer Dark? Veltar's light patterns were approaching the frequency of pure panic. "No one negotiates with the Hive Mind. It's composed of the collective consciousness of a species that went insane from exploring the spaces between dimensions." "Yeah, they're a bit eccentric," Admiral Kepler admitted. "But once you get used to the way they communicate, mostly through shared nightmares and existential dread. They're actually pretty reasonable. We've got a standing trade agreement with them now. They provide us with interdimensional navigation data, and we share our entertainment media with them. You share entertainment with a species made of collective insanity? They love sitcoms. Apparently, the concept of situational comedy is hilarious when you exist in a state of perpetual cosmic horror. Who knew? And suddenly Zexton understood. Humans weren't conquerors. They weren't even particularly advanced. They were just the only species in the galaxy who had looked at a universe full of cosmic horrors, impossible phenomena, and things that drove other species insane, and thought, hey, this looks interesting. Let's go make friends with it. Chapter 6. The Philosophy of Aggressive Helpfulness. As they continued toward the Meridian sector, Zexathan found himself drawn into longer and longer conversations with the human crew. It was like studying some form of exotic physics. The more he learned, the less sense it made, but the more fascinated he became. Lieutenant Commander Davis, he called during one of their regular check-ins. May I ask you a question about human psychology? Sure, Captain. Fire away. Why do you help people? There was a pause on the comm. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Why do you help people? Your species, I mean. From what I've observed, you seem to go out of your way to assist other civilizations, even when there's no clear benefit to yourselves. Well, because they need help? Yes, but why does that motivate you to action? Most species will help members of their own kind, sometimes even closely related species. But you seem to help everyone. Davis was quiet for a moment. Huh. You know, I've never really thought about it. It's just, when someone needs help, you help them. It's what you do. But why? Because if you don't help when you can, who will? This, Zexton realized, was the key to understanding humans. They had approached the universe not as conquerors or explorers, but as cosmic maintenance technicians. They saw problems and fixed them. They saw species in trouble and helped them. They saw areas of space that were too dangerous for others to explore, and they explored them just in case there was something useful there. They had accidentally created a galactic civilization not through conquest or trade or diplomacy, but through the simple philosophy of, someone should probably do something about that, and I guess that someone is us. Lieutenant Commander, Zexton said slowly, what do humans do when you encounter a problem that can't be solved? Can't be solved? I don't understand. A problem that is, by definition, impossible to solve. Oh, those. We work on them until they're not impossible anymore. And if they remain impossible, then we haven't worked on them hard enough yet. Veltar's light patterns had shifted to what Zexathan was beginning to recognize as the crystalline equivalent of profound philosophical confusion. But what if a problem is impossible due to the fundamental laws of reality? Then we need to have a conversation with reality about adjusting those laws. Reality is usually pretty reasonable about that sort of thing, once you explain the situation properly. Zexton stared at the comm panel. You negotiate with reality? Well, not negotiate exactly. More like collaborative problem-solving. Reality presents us with a challenge. We present reality with a creative solution. And somewhere in the middle we find something that works for everyone. This was insane. This was completely, utterly, fundamentally insane. It was also, Zexton was forced to admit, apparently effective. Admiral Kepler, he called. May I speak with you privately? Of course, Captain. What's on your mind? Zexton took what passed for a deep breath among his species. Admiral, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Shoot. Are humans actually aware of how terrifying you are to the rest of the galaxy? There was a long pause. When Admiral Kepler spoke again, his voice carried a note of genuine confusion. Terrifying? Us? Captain, we're just trying to be helpful. That's what makes you terrifying. What? Admiral, in the past 3 days I have watched your species casually dismiss threats that have destroyed entire civilizations. You've turned cosmic horrors into tourist attractions. You've made friends with entities that exist in a state of perpetual madness. You've looked at the most dangerous phenomena in known space and decided they needed research stations. Well, yes, but... And you do all of this not out of conquest or greed or even scientific curiosity. You do it because you think it might be helpful. I'm still not seeing the problem. Admiral, there is no other species in the galaxy that approaches existence the way humans do. Most of us see a dangerous situation and avoid it. You see a dangerous situation and immediately start wondering who might need rescuing from it. Most of us encounter something we don't understand and classify it as a threat. You encounter something you don't understand and invite it for dinner. That's just good manners. No, Admiral. That's terrifying. Do you have any idea what it's like to be a member of a species that has spent millennia learning to avoid certain areas of space? Only to discover that humans have not only explored those areas but have established gift shops there? Admiral Kepler was quiet for a long moment. Captain, are you saying that other species are afraid of us? Admiral, there are civilizations that have protocols in place for what to do if humans show up offering to help. The standard response is to immediately surrender and hope you don't decide their planet needs improvement. That's horrible. We would never. Admiral, 6 months ago, the Regellian Empire was dealing with a plague that was killing their crops. A human agricultural team showed up, studied the problem for 3 days, and solved it by introducing a genetically modified organism that not only eliminated the plague, but increased crop yields by 300%. That sounds like a good thing. The organism was created by weaponizing a virus that normally liquefies living tissue, modifying it to attack only the plague pathogen, and then making it symbiotic with the crops, so it would provide continuous protection and nutrition. Okay, that does sound a little extreme when you put it like that. Admiral, humans don't just solve problems. You solve them in ways that make other species question their understanding of what's possible. You help people in ways that redefine what help means. You're nice in ways that are fundamentally unsettling to everyone who encounters you. Chapter 7. The Meridian Incident, or How to Accidentally Start a Diplomatic Revolution. They reached the Meridian sector on schedule, which was itself something of a miracle given that the journey had involved navigating through interdimensional space, avoiding what the humans casually referred to as time storms, and making a brief stop to help a stranded merchant vessel that had been caught in what their sensors identified as a localized reality inversion. The merchant vessel incident had been particularly educational for Zexthan. The ship's crew had been trapped in a pocket of space where cause and effect had been reversed. They were experiencing their rescue before sending their distress call, which meant they couldn't send the distress call because they'd already been rescued, which meant they couldn't be rescued because they hadn't sent a distress call. The humans had solved this by having Lieutenant Kowalski talk to the phenomenon very firmly about the importance of linear time and proper causality. Somehow this had worked. You know, Admiral Kepler had commented afterward, reality can be surprisingly cooperative when you approach it with confidence and a clear explanation of what needs to happen. Now, as they approached Meridian Station, the primary hub of the Meridian Science Collective, Zexthan found himself facing a problem he hadn't anticipated. How exactly did one explain to their superiors that they had been rescued by the most terrifyingly helpful species in the galaxy? Meridian Station Control, this is Captain Zexthan of the science vessel Peaceful Inquiry, requesting permission to dock. Peaceful Inquiry. Captain, we've been worried sick. You've been missing for over 8 months! What happened? Are you all right? Do you need medical assistance? We're fine, Control. We experienced a navigation malfunction and were stranded in an uncharted system. We were rescued by... Zexthan paused, looking at the massive human fleet that was currently surrounding his tiny vessel like protective shepherds. We were rescued by representatives of the United Earth Space Force. The silence from Meridian Station Control was so profound that Zexthan began to worry that the communication link had failed. Control, do you copy? Captain, came the shaky voice of the station controller. Did you just say you were rescued by humans? Affirmative. As in, the humans? The Death Worlders? The species that weaponizes their curiosity? The very same. And Control, they've been nothing but helpful and courteous. They're requesting permission to dock for resupply, and to ensure our safe arrival. Another long silence. Then, Captain, please stand by. I need to make some calls. 20 minutes later, Zexthan found himself in communication with High Administrator Kethvol, the most senior official in the Meridian Science Collective, and a being whose normally calm demeanor had been replaced by what could best be described as barely controlled panic. Captain Zexthan, the High Administrator's image flickered on the screen. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Are the humans making any demands? Have they threatened you or your crew in any way? Are you speaking freely? High Administrator, I am speaking completely freely. The humans have made no demands and have issued no threats. They have been... Zexthan searched for the right words. They have been aggressively helpful. Aggressively helpful? They rescued us from a system that doesn't officially exist, provided us with supplies that are terrifyingly efficient, escorted us through some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy, and their idea of small talk is casual conversation about negotiating with cosmic horrors. High Administrator. Kethvol's expression grew more concerned. Captain, this is very serious. We're dealing with a species that has, in less than 4 centuries, gone from primitive planet-bound beings to the most feared civilization in the galaxy. Feared? Sir, with respect, I don't think they're trying to be feared. I think they're just trying to be helpful. That's what makes them so terrifying. Admiral Kepler's voice came over the comm. Excuse me, High Administrator. I couldn't help but overhear. Did you say we were feared? That's troubling. We were hoping to establish some sort of diplomatic relationship with the Meridian Science Collective. The High Administrator's face went through several color changes that Zexithan's translator struggled to interpret. Admiral, humans... What exactly did you have in mind? Well, Captain Zexithan mentioned that the collective focuses on scientific research. We'd be happy to share some of our findings. We've been doing some interesting work in applied impossibility theory, practical paradox resolution, and therapeutic reality adjustment. Therapeutic reality adjustment? Oh, it's great stuff. When reality isn't working the way it should, we help it get back on track. Very effective for treating localized physics disorders, temporal hiccups, and dimensional instabilities. Zexithan watched the High Administrator's expression cycle through disbelief, terror, and something that might have been professional curiosity. You can treat reality disorders? Sure can. It's all about communication. Reality wants to work properly. It just sometimes needs a little guidance. We've found that a combination of applied quantum mechanics and sincere conversation can resolve most reality-based problems. And you'd be willing to share this knowledge? Absolutely. That's what science is all about, right? Sharing discoveries to help everyone understand the universe better? The High Administrator was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Admiral, the Meridian Science Collective would be very interested in establishing a formal relationship with your people. Excellent. We'll set up a cultural exchange program. Send some of our scientists to learn about your research methods. Have some of your people visit our facilities. It'll be educational for everyone. After the communication ended, Zexithan found himself alone on his bridge with Veltar, who was flickering in patterns that suggested deep contemplation mixed with existential uncertainty. Veltar, Zexithan said quietly, I think we may have just witnessed the beginning of a new era in galactic relations. Either that, Veltar replied, his light patterns shifting to a frequency that indicated philosophical resignation. Or we've just helped the humans accidentally conquer another civilization through the sheer power of aggressive friendliness. Is there a difference? Veltar considered this. I'm beginning to think that might be the most terrifying question in the galaxy. Chapter 8. The Docking Bay Incident, or How Humans Redefined Routine Procedure. The docking process, which should have been a simple matter of connecting the peaceful inquiry to Meridian Station's docking bay, became what station personnel would later describe as the most politely catastrophic event in recorded history. It began when Admiral Kepler requested permission for his fleet to dock for resupply. Admiral, came the nervous voice of station control. We appreciate the offer, but our docking facilities aren't equipped for vessels of your size. Our largest bay can accommodate ships up to 300 meters in length. No problem at all, Admiral Kepler replied cheerfully. The Indomitable is only 200 meters long. We'll just use a little creative parking. Creative parking? Sure. We'll dock to the outside of the station. Magnetic clamps, structural reinforcement, temporary airlocks. Standard procedure. Sir. Station control's voice was rising in pitch. You can't just attach a 1,300-meter warship to the outside of our station. Why not? The station's structure looks solid. Good engineering. We'll distribute the load properly, won't cause any stress damage. Zexithan, who was monitoring the conversation, felt his mandibles begin their familiar stress clicking. Admiral, I don't think... Oh, don't worry, Captain. We've done this before. Remember the Centauri Station incident? The what incident? High Administrator Kethvol had joined the conversation, his voice carrying the tone of someone who was rapidly losing faith in the fundamental order of the universe. The Centauri Station incident. They had the same docking problem we do here. Old stations, small bays, big ships. So we attached our fleet to the outside of the station, created temporary docking bridges, and set up some additional structural supports. And how did that work out? Great! Well, mostly great. There was that minor issue where our artificial gravity interacted with their gravity generators and accidentally created a localized gravity well that turned the station's central plaza into a spherical room. But we fixed that. You turned a plaza into a sphere? Only temporarily. And nobody got hurt! Well, except for that one incident where someone tried to walk across the plaza and ended up walking on the ceiling. But that was more amusing than dangerous. High Administrator Kethvol made a sound that Zexithan's translator identified as either profound despair or the beginning of a nervous breakdown. Admiral, what you're describing is completely impossible. High Administrator. Admiral Kepler's voice carried a note of gentle correction. We prefer the term temporarily impossible. True impossibility is much rarer than most people think. There's a difference? Oh, absolutely. Temporarily impossible just means we haven't figured out how to do it yet. True impossibility is when something violates the fundamental principles of existence itself. That's much more serious. And you can tell the difference, usually. Lieutenant Commander Davis has an excellent sense for these things. Davis, what's your assessment of our current docking situation? Davis's voice came over the comm with the casual confidence that Zexthan was beginning to associate with humans discussing the impossible. Definitely temporarily impossible, sir. I'd say we're looking at a Class 3 reality adjustment, maybe Class 4 if we want to maintain normal artificial gravity throughout the process. Class 4 it is then, safety first. What? High Administrator Kethval asked in a voice that suggested he was no longer sure he wanted to know the answer. Is a Class 4 reality adjustment? Oh, that's when we need to convince local space-time that our ship and your station can occupy adjacent positions without interfering with each other's structural integrity. It requires some negotiation with the local gravitational field and a minor adjustment to the way mass-energy relationships function in the immediate area. You're going to negotiate with gravity? Well, negotiate is a strong word, more like collaborative problem-solving. Gravity wants to do its job properly. We want to park our ship safely, so we work together to find a solution that makes everyone happy. Zexthan realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans weren't just casually violating the laws of physics. They were politely asking the laws of physics to step aside for a moment while they accomplished their goals. Admiral, he said weakly, perhaps we should consider alternative arrangements. Nonsense, Captain. We've got this figured out. Chief Petty Officer Williams, begin the docking procedure. Aye, sir. Initializing reality adjustment protocols. Local spacetime is being very cooperative today. On Meridian Station, alarms began sounding. Not emergency alarms. The station's computers weren't sophisticated enough to have a specific alarm for humans are casually redefining the nature of reality in your immediate vicinity. But the general purpose, something is happening that shouldn't be possible alarm. Station control to all personnel, came the announcement over the station's comm system. We are experiencing a localized space-time anomaly. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Also, apparently this is normal for humans, so please remain calm. Through the viewports of the station, personnel watched in fascination and terror as the massive human warship Indomitable approached the station, moving not through space, but somehow adjacent to it. The ship's hull seemed to flicker between dimensions, and local gravity fluctuated in ways that made objects fall upward, sideways, and in at least one case, backwards through time. Admiral? High Administrator Kethval called, his voice tight with panic. The gravitational anomaly is spreading. My coffee cup just achieved orbital velocity around my desk, and I'm receiving reports that several personnel are experiencing temporal hiccups. Temporal hiccups? They're aging backwards. Dr. Velnine in astrophysics is currently experiencing his morning routine in reverse order. Oh, that. Yeah, that happens sometimes when we adjust local causality. It'll sort itself out once we complete the docking procedure. In the meantime, make sure Dr. Velnine doesn't try to uneat his breakfast. That can cause digestive paradoxes. Digestive what? Nothing serious. Just uncomfortable. 10 minutes later, the Indomitable was somehow securely attached to the outside of Meridian Station in a way that completely defied conventional understanding of physics, engineering, and common sense. The station's structural integrity was not only undamaged, but had somehow improved. Local gravity had returned to normal, though it was now distributed in a pattern that made the station's central plaza 15% more comfortable to walk through. And Dr. Velnine had successfully returned to moving forward through time, though he reported that his morning routine was now approximately 12% more efficient. Docking complete, reported Chief Petty Officer Williams. All systems nominal. Local reality has been very cooperative. Excellent work, Williams. High Administrator, we're ready to begin shore leave rotations and cultural exchange activities. High Administrator Kethval stared out his office viewport at the massive human ship that was somehow attached to his station, in a configuration that his engineering staff had unanimously declared impossible but structurally sound. Admiral, he said slowly, I think we need to have a very serious conversation about human definitions of standard procedure. Of course, High Administrator. We're always happy to explain our methods. Would you like to start with basic reality adjustment techniques, or jump straight to advanced impossibility management? Chapter 9. The Cultural Exchange, or How to Accidentally Revolutionize Science. The Cultural Exchange program began with what Admiral Kepler described as a simple meet-and-greet session. This should have been Sexton's first warning that nothing involving humans was ever simple. The meeting was held in Meridian Station's largest conference room, which had been hastily modified to accommodate the gravitational fluctuations that seemed to follow humans wherever they went. The station's engineers had installed additional structural supports, redundant life support systems, and what they diplomatically referred to as reality anchors, devices designed to prevent local spacetime from becoming too enthusiastic about spontaneous reorganization. High Administrator Kethval had assembled the station's most senior scientists, reasoning that if anyone could understand what humans were talking about when they discussed applied impossibility theory, it would be the collective's most brilliant minds. This proved to be a significant underestimation of the problem. "Good morning, everyone," Admiral Kepler began, his smile somehow managing to be both friendly and vaguely ominous. "We're excited to share some of our recent research with you. Dr. Elizabeth Forge, our Chief Science Officer, will be presenting our findings on practical paradox resolution." Dr. Forge stepped forward, a woman in her 50s with the sort of calm expression that suggested she regularly dealt with concepts that would drive normal people insane. "Thank you, Admiral. Colleagues, we're here today to discuss some advances we've made in what we call cooperative impossibility." Dr. Yextal, the station's leading theoretical physicist, raised a tentacle. "Dr. Forge, could you define what you mean by cooperative impossibility?" "Certainly. Traditional approaches to impossible phenomena treat impossibility as an obstacle to be overcome. Our research suggests that this is counterproductive. Instead of fighting impossibility, we found that working with it produces much better results." The room fell silent. Sexton could see several of the collective's scientists exchanging glances that conveyed various levels of confusion and concern. Dr. Zephram, a specialist in quantum mechanics, spoke up hesitantly. "Dr. Forge, I'm not sure I understand. How does one work with impossibility?" "Well, the key insight is that impossibility isn't actually impossible. It's just improbable under current conditions. So instead of trying to force possible outcomes, we adjust the conditions to make impossibility more probable." "You make impossibility probable?" "Exactly. For example, last month we needed to transport a research station through a black hole without it being destroyed by tidal forces or temporal distortion. Every scientist in the room leaned forward simultaneously. The traditional approach would be to develop new technology to protect the station from the black hole's effects. But that's fighting the impossibility. Instead, we had a conversation with the black hole about the importance of scientific research, and convinced it to temporarily adjust its event horizon to accommodate our station's passage. Dr. Yextal's tentacles had gone completely rigid. "You convinced a black hole?" "It wasn't difficult. Black holes are actually quite reasonable once you understand their perspective. They're just trying to do their job, warp spacetime, consume matter, maintain cosmic balance. Our station's passage was a minor inconvenience at most. Once we explained that our research would contribute to better understanding of stellar phenomena, the black hole was happy to help." "The black hole was happy to help," Dr. Zephram repeated slowly. "Very happy. It even offered to provide additional gravitational effects for our experiments. Black holes take professional pride in their work, and they appreciate being included in the scientific process, rather than just being treated as obstacles." High Administrator Kethval raised a shaking hand. "Dr. Forge, are you saying that you communicate with cosmic phenomena?" "Oh, absolutely. The universe is much more collaborative than most species realize. The problem is that most scientific methods involve studying phenomena without actually talking to them. It's like trying to understand a foreign culture without ever speaking to anyone from that culture." Dr. Velmine, the station's expert on interdimensional physics, spoke up. "But cosmic phenomena don't have consciousness. They don't think or feel or communicate." Dr. Forge smiled. "That's a common misconception. They don't think or feel or communicate the way biological species do, but they definitely have their own forms of awareness and preference. A stellar nursery has very different priorities than a neutron star, for instance." "What kind of priorities?" "Well, stellar nurseries are primarily concerned with efficient star formation and maintaining proper elemental distribution. They're very organized, very focused on long-term planning. Neutron stars, on the other hand, are more interested in precision timing and electromagnetic coordination. They're excellent at managing complex rotational schedules." Sexton watched the faces of the collective scientists cycle through disbelief, confusion, and what appeared to be the early stages of existential crisis. Dr. Forge, High Administrator Kethval said carefully, would it be possible for you to demonstrate these communication techniques? Of course. We brought along a small demonstration kit. Lieutenant Briggs, could you set up the quantum consciousness interface? Lieutenant Briggs stepped forward, carrying what appeared to be a briefcase full of components that hurt to look at directly. Certainly, Doctor. What would you like to communicate with? Dr. Forge looked around the room thoughtfully. Well, we're in space, so let's start simple. How about the local gravitational field? She opened the briefcase and began assembling components that seemed to phase in and out of visible reality. The device she constructed looked like it had been designed by someone who had a very creative relationship with conventional engineering principles. Now, she said, switching on the device, let me introduce you to the gravitational field in this area of space. The device emitted a soft humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Suddenly, the conference room was filled with what could only be described as a presence. Not visible, not audible, but unmistakably there. Hello, Dr. Forge said conversationally. We have some new friends here who'd like to meet you. Would you mind introducing yourself? The presence seemed to shift, and suddenly everyone in the room was experiencing a sensation that was somehow equivalent to hearing a voice, though no sound was made. Gravitational field designation local meridian 7739. Current status stable. Mass distribution satisfactory. Pleased to meet colleagues. Dr. Yextal fell off his chair. Wonderful, Dr. Forge continued. My colleagues here are scientists like us. They're very interested in learning about your work. Work is satisfactory. Maintain proper orbital mechanics. Ensure structural stability for inhabited structures. Coordinate with neighboring fields for optimal space-time curvature. Take pride in precise mathematical relationships. That's excellent work, Dr. Forge said warmly. Is there anything we could do to help you perform more efficiently? Occasional consultation on complex gravitational calculations would be appreciated. Also, fewer unexpected mass fluctuations. Difficult to maintain precision when ships randomly adjust their density. Dr. Forge nodded understandingly. That's a very reasonable request. We'll make sure our crews are more considerate about mass fluctuations in the future. Gratitude expressed. Cooperation appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us, Dr. Forge said. We'll let you get back to your work now. The presence faded, leaving the conference room full of scientists staring at the human woman who had just conducted a polite conversation with a fundamental force of physics. High Administrator Kethval was the first to speak. Dr. Forge, what you've just demonstrated, this changes everything. If cosmic phenomena can be communicated with, if they can be collaborators rather than subjects of study. Exactly. The universe becomes a much friendlier place once you start treating it as a partner rather than an opponent. Most phenomena are actually quite happy to help with scientific research, as long as you ask nicely and respect their professional priorities. Dr. Zephyrim raised a trembling tentacle. Dr. Forge, would it be possible to learn these techniques? Absolutely. That's why we're here. We've found that scientific collaboration works best when everyone can participate fully. The more species that can communicate with cosmic phenomena, the better our understanding of the universe becomes. Zex then realized he was witnessing the beginning of a scientific revolution. Humans hadn't just developed new technology. They had fundamentally redefined the relationship between consciousness and cosmos. They had turned the universe from a collection of phenomena to be studied into a community of colleagues to be collaborated with. Admiral Kepler, High Administrator Kethval said, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and terror. I think the Meridian Science Collective would be very interested in establishing a permanent exchange program with your people. Outstanding! We'll start with basic cosmic communication protocols and work our way up to advanced reality negotiation. This is going to be fun. In the background, barely audible, someone whispered, I'm beginning to understand why the Void Hunters ran away. Chapter 10. The Resolution, or How Humans Accidentally Fixed Everything. 3 months later, Zexthan found himself back aboard the Peaceful Inquiry, but this time as part of an official diplomatic mission between the Meridian Science Collective and the United Earth Space Force. The ship had been upgraded with human technology, which meant it now had capabilities that officially shouldn't exist but worked perfectly anyway. Captain, Veltar announced, his light patterns now stable and confident. We're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Confederation Council. Put it through, Veltar. The view screen lit up with the image of Counselor Nexvim, the ancient and supposedly wise leader of the Confederation. His expression suggested that wisdom had its limits, and he might have recently exceeded them. Captain Zexathan, the counselor began. I understand you've been working with the humans. That's correct, Counselor. The exchange program has been extraordinarily successful. We've made advances in cosmic communication, reality adjustment, and practical impossibility theory that have revolutionized our understanding of— Yes, I'm sure it's all very impressive. The problem, Captain, is that the humans appear to be spreading. Sexton blinked his 4 eyes in sequence. Spreading? In the 3 months since your initial contact, human vessels have been spotted in 17 different sectors. They claim to be helping various civilizations with their problems. And they're succeeding. The Regelian crop plague has been eliminated. The Centauri Station incident has been resolved with improvements to the station's structural efficiency. The Void Gardens now have safety rails and tour guides. The burning zones have been converted into a research facility that's producing breakthrough discoveries in plasma physics. The Whisper sectors have been turned into a meditation retreat that's booked solid for the next 3 years. Counselor, those all sound like positive developments. That's the problem. The humans are fixing everything! Do you have any idea what this is doing to galactic civilization? Sexton considered this. Making it better, making it different. For 12,000 years, galactic civilization has operated on the principle that certain things are impossible. Certain areas of space are off limits, and certain problems can't be solved. The humans have made all of that obsolete. Is that bad? Counselor Nexivim made a sound that the universal translator struggled with before settling on existential despair. Captain, the Galactic Confederation's entire governmental structure is based on managing the problems that can't be solved and avoiding the dangers that can't be overcome. If humans keep solving impossible problems and making friends with cosmic horrors, what exactly are we supposed to govern? Perhaps, Zexithan suggested carefully, you could govern a civilization that doesn't have unsolvable problems and avoidable dangers? But that's— The counselor paused, his expression cycling through several complex emotions. That's actually a very interesting idea. Admiral Kepler, Zexthan called. Could you join this conversation? I think the counselor has some questions about human administrative techniques. Admiral Kepler's image appeared on the screen beside Counselor Nexivim. Good afternoon, Counselor. What can we help you with? Admiral, I need to understand something. Your species has been systematically solving problems that have plagued galactic civilization for millennia. You've made dangerous areas safe, turned hostile phenomena into cooperative partners, and generally made the universe a much more manageable place. That sounds about right. But why? What do you get out of it? Admiral Kepler looked genuinely puzzled by the question. We get a universe that works better for everyone. Isn't that enough? But there must be some benefit to your species specifically. Resources, territory, strategic advantages. Well, we do get to make a lot of new friends, and we learn fascinating things about how the universe operates. Plus, it's just nice to know that fewer people are dealing with existential threats on a daily basis. Counselor Nexivim stared at the screen for a long moment. Admiral, are you telling me that your species has accidentally revolutionized galactic civilization as a side effect of being friendly? I wouldn't say accidentally. We're being friendly on purpose. The revolution part just sort of happened naturally. The counselor struggled for words. This is the most effective conquest strategy in recorded history. Conquest? Admiral Kepler sounded genuinely confused. Counselor, we're not conquering anyone. We're just helping. That's what makes it so effective. No one can resist being helped, especially when the help actually works. Within a few years, every civilization in the galaxy will be dependent on human assistance for dealing with cosmic phenomena. You'll have achieved total galactic dominance through the application of aggressive helpfulness. Counselor, Admiral Kepler said gently, I think you might be overcomplicating this. We don't want to dominate anyone. We just want everyone to be okay. But if everyone is okay, if all the problems are solved and all the dangers are neutralized, what happens to the existing power structures? What happens to the careful balance of fear and uncertainty that has maintained galactic stability for millennia? Maybe, Admiral Kepler suggested, they get replaced by something better? Counselor Nexivim was quiet for a very long time. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a tone that Zexthan had never heard before, something that might have been hope mixed with resignation. Admiral, the Galactic Confederation Council would like to formally request assistance with a problem we've been dealing with for approximately 8,000 years. We'd be happy to help. What's the issue? We can't figure out how to govern a peaceful, cooperative, functionally healthy civilization. All of our systems are designed for managing chaos, mediating conflicts, and containing disasters. If you humans keep making the universe a nice place to live, we're going to need entirely new approaches to governance. Admiral Kepler smiled. That sounds like a fascinating challenge. We'd love to help you work on it. And that, Zexthan realized, was how humans had accidentally conquered the galaxy. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology or brilliant strategy, but by being so relentlessly helpful that resistance became not just futile, but pointless. They had looked at a universe full of problems and decided to fix them. They had encountered cosmic horrors and decided to make friends with them. They had found civilizations in trouble and decided to help them. And in doing so, they had transformed the galaxy from a dangerous place where survival required careful avoidance of threats into a collaborative community where problems were solved through cooperative effort and cosmic phenomena were treated as colleagues rather than obstacles. 6 months later, Zexthan stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Cooperation Station, watching human ships ferry supplies to civilizations that had once been considered enemies, while teams of mixed-species scientists worked together on projects that would have been considered impossible just a year before. "You know," Veltar commented, his light patterns reflecting something that might have been contentment. "I'm beginning to think that the humans might have been exactly what the galaxy needed." "Either that," Zexthan replied, "or they've convinced the entire galaxy that needing them was exactly what we wanted all along." "Is there a difference?" Zexthan considered this as he watched a human engineer having an animated conversation with what appeared to be a localized space-time distortion, apparently discussing the finer points of dimensional stability maintenance. "With humans," he said finally, "I'm not sure there ever is." In the distance, barely visible against the starfield, the Void Hunters could be seen approaching the station. But instead of the panic such a sight would have caused a year ago, the station's personnel simply noted their arrival on the duty roster. The Void Hunters had a scheduled appointment to discuss their participation in a joint research project on exotic energy consumption patterns. After all, as the humans had discovered, even cosmic predators had valuable insights to contribute to galactic civilization, as long as you approach them with the right combination of professional respect and friendly curiosity. The galaxy, Zexthan reflected, had become a much stranger place since the humans had arrived. It had also become a much better one, and somehow those two facts seemed to be directly related. Epilogue. The footnote problem. 1 year later, the Galactic Confederation published a revised edition of their Species to Avoid at All Costs handbook. The section on humans had been completely rewritten. It now read, "Humans approach with caution. Not because they're dangerous. They are, but in helpful ways. But because once they start helping you, you'll wonder how you ever managed without them. Side effects may include dramatically improved quality of life, revolutionary scientific advances, the sudden realization that most of your problems were actually solvable, and an inexplicable urge to start conversations with cosmic phenomena. Do not attempt to resist human assistance. It's more effective than you think and more permanent than you expect. Also, they make excellent coffee, though this may be a side effect of their ability to negotiate with the fundamental forces of reality." Footnote 1a had been updated to read, "There is still no footnote 1a. But if you think you're reading it, you're probably having a pleasant conversation with a friendly human about the nature of existence. This is normal. Enjoy the experience." The handbook's most popular new addition was footnote 420x. If humans offer to help you with an impossible problem, say yes immediately. They're going to solve it anyway, and this way you get to watch. But the footnote that captured the situation best was the new footnote 1b. "The humans are coming. This is the best news the galaxy has received in 12,000 years. And in smaller print, barely visible at the bottom of the page. Seriously, stop panicking. They just want to help. Let them."